Hi everyone, welcome to another learning session. Today in our math class, we'll be looking at square roots of 1 and 2 digit numbers. Remember in our previous lesson, we looked at the squares of numbers and we said that a square of a number is that number that is obtained when the other number multiplies itself. We get the squares of numbers when certain numbers multiply themselves. Let's look at what we have here. For instance, 2 times 2 gives us 4, 3 times 3 gives 9, 4 times 4 16, 5 times 5 25, 6 times 6 36. So that means since 2 multiplies itself to give 4, 4 is a square, the square of 2. Since 3 multiplies itself to give us 9, 9 is the square of 3. Okay? And I'll suggest you refer to our previous video on squares of numbers because that will help you to get a better understanding of why they are called squares. You will get a visual representation of these squares, okay, as they appear when they are represented visually. So try to refer to that video. This one is just a recap to remind us before we move on to square root. So these numbers that are obtained when certain numbers multiply themselves are called squares of those numbers. So 4 is a square of 2, 9 is a square of 3, 16 is a square of 4, 25 square of 5, and 36 is a square of 6. Okay? So now we've established what squares are, or reminded ourselves of what squares are. So let's go to the main lesson for today, which is on square roots. So since 4 is a square of 2, it means that 2 is the square root of 4. 3 is the square root of 9. 4 is the square root of 16. Square root is like the opposite of square. We are going to get into the main lesson, okay? But just before this part on the board here is removed, I want you to see something. We have established that when you multiply a number by itself, the answer you get is the square of that number, okay? So 4 is the square of 2. On the flip side, 2 is the square root of 4. So we therefore ask, what is a square root? A square root is the number that multiplies itself to give another number. A number that multiplies itself to give another number is the square root of that other number. Alright, so the square root of a number, let's take the number to be x, for instance, is the number that multiplies itself to give the number x. The square root of the number x is that number that multiplies itself to give us the number x. For instance, 2 times 2 gives us 4. That means 2 is multiplying itself to give 4. That means that 2 is the square root of 4. Okay? So next, what we're going to look at is how to obtain the square roots of numbers. How do we get the square roots of numbers? So the method we're going to look at here is called prime factorization. I wouldn't want to go into the details of this because of our level, okay? But I will just quickly let us know that all is basically about is dividing numbers using prime numbers. Dividing whatever number is we're looking for the square root using prime numbers. And what are prime numbers? Prime numbers are those numbers that only themselves can divide with 1 without a remainder. No other number can divide them without leaving a remainder except themselves and 1. For instance, 2 is a prime number. 3 is a prime number. These numbers you see here, no other number can divide them without leaving a remainder. So in using your prime factorization to get the square roots of numbers, these are the numbers that you use to divide, okay? So let's quickly find the square root of 9. Remember the prime numbers we listed 2, 3, 5, and so on. Now if you look at 9, 9 is an odd number. That means 2 cannot divide it without leaving a remainder. So we're not going to use 2. Now the next number to try is 3. And we know the 3 can divide 9, right? So we start with 3. So 3 divides 9, we have 3. So there's still a number left. What number do you think can divide 3? 3 can divide itself. So 3 divides 3, we have 1. Now once you get to 1, it means you have reached the end of your division process. You're going to stop there. Now next, what do? Pick out your prime factors. That is the numbers that you used in dividing. So what are the prime factors we have here? The prime factors are 3 times 3. Okay, so we have 3 and 3. This is not so necessary, you can leave it out. So we have 3 in 2 places. But since we are looking for the square root, we know that if we do 3 times 3, it's going to give us 9. So that means the square root of this is just 1 out of these 2 numbers. Now let me quickly say this. For you to get the square root of numbers, all the prime factors that are used must be in pairs. They must be in 2s. Prime factors, let me just squeeze it here, must be in pairs. You know what pairs means? They must be in 2s. So all the prime factors you have, as they are in pairs, you pick 1 out of each pair. So since we have 3 and 3 here, we are just going to pick 1, 3. That means the square root of 9 is 3, just 3. If we have 2 times 2, for instance, as our prime factors that we used, we just pick 1 out of those 2. And then the prime factor of that number will be just 2. Okay, so 3 is the square root of 9. We'll look at another example. So let's look at the square root of 16. Now if we look at 16, we know it's an even number, right? So let's try and see what prime numbers we can use. 2 can go, right? Because 2 can divide any even number. So we start with 2. 2 divides 16, that gives us 8. 8 is also even number, so 2 can go again. That gives us 4. 2 divides 4, that gives us 2. 2 divides 2, that gives us 1. Now we have got to 1, so we stop there. Now what do we do next? Let's bring out our prime factors. So here we have 2, 2, 2, 2. Now if you multiply this, the essence of writing this out is to let you know that when you multiply all these numbers, you're going to get the initial number back. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2, 8, times 2, 16. You'll get back to your 16. But that's not where we're going. So what do? Remember we said that they must be in pairs. So we have 2 and 2, that's a pair, and this another 2 and 2, that's another pair. So what do? We pick 1, 2 from here, and we pick 1, 2 from here. So that will give us 2 times 2, which is equal to 4. Okay, so this is our final answer. That means that the square root of 16 is equal to 4. Okay, so this is the symbol. Sorry if I didn't show it earlier. This is the symbol for representing square root. That is a symbol for square root. Okay, so let's take this last example, the square root of 36. 36 is an even number because it ends with 6. 6 is an even number, so 2 can go. So 2 divides 3, 1. Here we have 16 because 1 is being transferred there. 16 divided by 2 is 8. So 36 divided by 2 gives us 18. 18 is also an even number, so 2 can go again. 2 goes into 18, that is 9. 9 is not an even number, so 2 cannot go anymore. So we try 3. Yes, 3 can divide 9. 3 divides 9, that gives us 3. And 3 divides 3, that gives us 1. Now, if you look at what we have here, the prime factors, you'll see that they are in pairs. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12. And 12 times 3 is 36. So remember what we said, that they must be in pairs, and from each pair you pick just one. So this is one pair and this is another pair. So you just pick one out of the pairs. So that means we have 2 times 3. And 2 times 3 gives us what? 6. That means that the square root of 36 is equal to 6. Again, you see the symbol. Please take note. This is the symbol of square root. That's the symbol of square root. And just to mention, it's in our previous video, but if you see something like 6 and the little 2 at the top right corner, okay, that is 6 squared. That means 6 squared, and that is the same thing as 6 times 6, which gives 36. Okay, this one is in the other video. I'm just showing us here in case you see 6 with a small 2 written at the top right side. It means 6 raised to power 2, or 6 squared, and that's the same as 6 times 6, which gives 36. And here, this is the square root of 36 is 6. So please just remember, you use your prime numbers to divide. That's the first thing. And secondly, you also note that the prime factors that you use must be in pairs at the end of the day. If they are not in pairs, then something is wrong with your calculation. Okay, now when you get them in pairs, pick one out of each pair, and at the end of the day, multiply the ones you picked out. You're going to get your square root. Okay, I hope we have learned something today. Hope to see you next time. Until then, stay blessed and stay safe.